Howdy, folks. Happy Thursday. We have a full crew here. I was not sure if we were going to, but we found a way, and we may be joined by Eck. He's got some things going on today, and some things going on in the NHL, not games, obviously, but boy, did Twitter blow up last night, and we'll talk about that, and not in a good way, and especially for a former Toronto Marley and Toronto Maple Leaf. But we'll start with some pre-show stuff. Go ahead, Russ.
Well, in a tale as old as time, and literally I was told this story by my dad about Joe Louis when he was kicking around, when he lost all his money, when he went into professional wrestling and then started doing unsanctioned boxing, exhibition boxing, as they call it, and then just, was a shell of himself. It was very sad for him to see.
He fought Rocky Marciano, I think, when he was 40-something. So
I don't know, but he went way beyond that.
Oh, I know.
Yeah. And it got very, sad. And so when I see the news of Evander Holyfield trying to fight at the age of 57, even though he's calling it an exhibition, and Mike Tyson trying to do this possible, he's not trying yet, but he's been offered $20 million to do bare knuckles boxing. Here's my thought. This is the quick road, the fast track to Parkinson's and CTE for these guys. And getting knocked in the head a few times, is it really worth it to them to have this money that they already had hundreds of millions? Holyfield was rich beyond belief, and people are telling me now he's broke.
Considering what his personal situation was, I am not the least bit surprised with the amount of outlay he probably has. But the amount of children, I think the amount of children that he has.
He makes Antonio Rogers Cromartie look like he's
So I'm not surprised. I'm not surprised one bit he's wiped out.
All places, sure. I mean, and we've heard that story too. But here's the surprising thing. So bare knuckles boxing is actually illegal in the United States, and only since 2018 did it become legal in Wyoming, and then Mississippi and Vermont added on. And so those are the only three places in the United States right now that you could even do bare knuckles boxing, and this one guy's doing it. And I'm just appalled that actually it's legal to do in this country. That's going back to the 1900s. Go watch some of those boxing matches when they did bare knuckles and see how these guys got destroyed. It's just, I can't believe it.
Jack Johnson in the 1910s, right? I mean, you saw the damage that was caused.
Oh yeah.
I'm pretty shocked that that given all the litigation we've seen with football in general, that there's certain states that enabled this to become legal again.
Yeah, it's disgusting.
Well, the thing I find interesting is that, and it seems to be on the same timeline here, because I didn't know about the Holyfield thing until you mentioned it, Russ.
Yeah.
But last week, Tyson apparently has been working out with some MMA trainer, and they showed a 5-second GIF on Twitter of him punching some guy in the midsection with the padding on, and then taking a swing at the two gloves, and with real hard impact. And then the guy comes out and says, "Oh, he's punching like he's a 21-year-old." And as soon as I heard that, I'm like, he's not coming back for an exhibition. He's coming back to fight somebody to make money. And I'm like, Tyson can't make money bare knuckle boxing.
No, $20 million they offered him. He can.
Well, I mean, I'd be shocked if that. Maybe it's a pay-per-view type of thing, but you know what? I have a feeling he's going to go the way of George Foreman. I think both of them are going to try it. All of a sudden, you got the senior WW.
They're going to fight each other, is what you're thinking.
Yes.
That's what's going to happen. I mean, how many? They had 2 fights.
I think only one.
No, just one.
Just the one.
The ear chew.
Yeah.
Right, the ear chew, and there wasn't a rematch after that, right?
No.
No, he had Bo. It was Bo. He had multiple.
Yeah, Riddick Bowe.
Yeah. Big Daddy Bo. Yes. But so yes, the story is as old as the crucifixion. You'll always have these boxers coming back, way past their prime. We saw it with Ali. We saw it with Tyson when he came out of jail. He was done after he came out of jail. They keep doing it. It will never stop.
You know the problem with a Tyson fight, and let's say he were to fight MMA because he's with an MMA trader, nobody's afraid of him. That was half of his allure, was when guys were afraid of him. When guys stopped being afraid of Mike Tyson, and he lived in my hotel, so I unfortunately got to know him too well. When guys stop being afraid of Mike Tyson? Mike Tyson all of a sudden wasn't as good a boxer anymore.
I just remember.
Well, it's good.
Go ahead, Jay.
No, I just remember. I mean, look, Tyson was when he walked in the ring, the no robe, the no socks, the gloves, the glare, and then he stopped training, right? And that's what happened when he got away, when Customato passed away, and shortly thereafter, that's when he lost his edge. Before that, he had the edge psychologically, but also the hand speed was ridiculous in his prime. And then he just stopped training, and then you had the Buster Douglas fight, and from there it was all downhill after that fight.
Which I may have been. I know it was an HBO fight, and it was in Japan. I think it was at like 1 o'clock or 1:30 in the morning.
It was a very late on a Saturday night, and I was driving home, I think, on the FDR, and heard it from Jody Mack calling it on the air on FAN at about 1 a.m.
We watched it on HBO.
Coast,
so did I.
As a kid, it was all of us. So it used to be. Tyson fights were, I mean, we all know they were an event. I mean, I still remember we would get, my grandfather would come over our house in South Philly. We'd have everybody around. I'd be at the foot of the couch watching it, and it was like unbelievable to watch this guy. But I still remember the Douglas fight like it was yesterday. And
for 3 straight fights, he stayed in my hotel. Tyson and Alex Stewart, Tyson and I saw all of it. But
Mitch Blood Green.
Yeah, Mitch Green wasn't in the hotel. He's another one. I never met him, but his reputation.
Oh yes.
But the thing about Mike Tyson and that Buster Douglas fight, and I don't remember the name of the company, but whoever put out Mike Tyson Punch Out, the release of it was the next day, and Buster Douglas had won the title, and Tyson had the title on the cover, and that killed the video game sales of that game.
I don't recall it killing this. I mean, I remember
it hurt it. It definitely hurt it.
Everybody I knew who I grew up with, we all bought it. Everybody bought it. I mean,
I could never get past Piston Hurricane. I always beat Ball.
No, but that was just Punch Out. That wasn't.
No. They ended up having them in.
But that was the
Tyson was like the end boss after you fought whoever.
So they got ported
Bull. I think it was Bald Bull or something like that.
Last Joe, Bald Bull, Piston Hurricane.
Because that was the arcade version, and this was the home version.
I'm hearing tales of a misspent youth here by several.
Yes,
we all played it.
I wasn't a video game guy. I played the bases. I played John Elway quarterback.
Yep.
Right. I played I think the bases loaded game in the arcade.
Was awesome. Bases loaded was awesome.
When I needed to blow off steam at night.
Piston Hurricane looked a lot like Ken Norton, so he should have sued. Just one thing on Major League Baseball, because Russ, you can tell. First of all, the thing that came out from Trevor Plouffe, who I don't know if he's on Minnesota anymore, but
no, he's not.
I don't know where he is now, but he tweeted out something about June 10th for spring training and July 1st, and then Keith Law from ESPN stomped on it and said that that's a complete fabrication. And then Jeff Passan came out today and basically said, that's what they're sort of aiming for. So they're aiming for July 1st, but until this thing about the money gets straightened out, nothing's going to happen, because I just heard about 5 minutes ago that the Major League players, they want to play as many regular season games as they possibly can, because like NHL players, they get paid for the regular season and they don't get paid for the playoffs. The owners get the revenue and the TV ratings and everything from the playoffs. They want to play 100 games starting July 1st, which would force the playoffs into November. And then you're running into bad weather and it starts to get cold. And what if the virus comes back? The players won't care because they got their money. But the players do.
Yeah, ultimately that's it. They haven't even decided on the draft. So I'm the most skeptical about baseball, simply because they don't have all the other things, like you just said, in line. We'll see if they get them in line. But, and I forget who the pitcher was. Again, they're going to have players that don't want to play either. Just like I told Eck in hockey.
But
go ahead. You also had technically you had a settlement, right? You had a $170 million settlement that they did because some of the players wanted to get their money, and the impact was on the minor leaguers as well. And part of that is the determination of moving, as we've talked a couple times, a 5-round draft, in my opinion, is an abomination. I mean, look, don't get me started on Manfred, because we could probably take the whole show, because I think, Russ, I know you agree with me. We both think he's horrific. And he's bastardizing the sport and ruining the sport, in my opinion. So I'm hopeful that we have sports. I do think, I heard rumors July 4th is what a lot of people have talked about, right? National holiday, a day for starting everything again. There's clearly a lot that has to be ironed out. between the Players Association and the MLB. And we also know that the relationship between Tony Clark and Manfred is nothing to write home about, which is going to impact and cloud every conversation that they have. So there's an enormous amount. I mean, every sport has challenges. That just seems to have more challenges than even some of the others because of the relationship between the two parties.
Right.
Yeah. I mean, let's just say this: if they will have to negotiate something. Apparently, the stance of the owners is, well, that $170 million agreement, that was an agreement, but the extenuating circumstances, nobody thought that this was going to shut down and have no fans and things of that nature. And it was a temporary thing to shut down the game. And they thought everything on June 1st would be, full stadium. Well, it's not going to be that way. And they're not willing. And some owners are willing to shut down the season because they make more money than if they were playing games, because they're getting their.
The fun part is, Mike is right. Is the only thing about business interruption insurance, right? And that's come across in a whole bunch of jobs and a whole bunch of industries right now. What do they have from a business interruption insurance type of perspective? And is this covered? Is this act of God? Is it not act of God? Right. How is it covered? And as you said, if teams are losing money, they may well prefer not to play because the fact that they'll reduce their losses or they'll recoup some of the assets if games aren't played.
Yeah, they'll lose less money if they don't have to pay their players. That's the whole thing. It's like if you're Kansas City and you don't have to pay, whatever player is still left on Kansas City, Alex Gordon, okay, so then you're better off that way. But if you're the Yankees and you make tons of money on the Yes broadcasting and things of that nature, or the Mets with the SNY, they want to play games. So. Yeah, it's going to be really.
Anthony's teleporting himself. We need to start the show.
Yeah, I know. He just changed to a different location.
What the hell?
Protecting the innocent or something, Anthony?
Nah, the little one moved into the area and started. I didn't want him interrupting the recording.
Start walking across the camera again.
So I had to jump into exactly like last episode where he kind of walked in with as a cameo. But I figured I'd jump into the wormhole and come outside.
You can get on. Okay. Hello, Hockey World. Today is Thursday, May 7th, 2020.
I'm Anthony Mangione from Sunrise Philly Magazine.
I'm Jan Levine.
Russ Cohen from Sportsology.
And I'm Michael Agello, not coughing today, and this is the HockeyBuzzcast here on HockeyBuzz.com. Okay, let's start with the story that everybody was talking about. We're not going to go on and on about it, but I think it's valid to talk about it because let's just say this: if the season was going right now, it would be probably in the middle or late round 2, and I think this would be sort of it would be a story. It'd be something on Reddit. It'd be something on social media, but everybody focused on the Brendan Leipsic situation last night. It couldn't have happened at a worse time for him because there's nothing going on, so everybody focused on it. And for now I don't know if it's been verified that a friend of his the Instagram account was hacked or if somebody just copied it and sent it out. We don't know for sure, but that's
the excuse that a lot of people use.
That's the excuse that's been used.
Which speaks to your character as an individual that you have friends who would do that to you.
Right. So, but it was three things, and we're not going to state specifically three things in the series of messages that were released to the public that were concerning. One was criticism of line mates, of his own teammates. Another was references to drug use. And the third was, and these are in no particular order of importance, but the third was comments about teammates' wives and women in a derogatory fashion. Now, I don't know what's going to kill his career quickest. I think the combo is somebody who I talked to via text last night, radioactive. But Russ, I'll start with you. If he was a star player, I think, and I'm not comparing what happened to Kuznetsov, but what happened with Kuznetsov with the cocaine situation last year, he got banned for international for, I think, 3 or 4 years, but nothing happened to him, a few games in the NHL, and everything was basically forgotten. He's a star player. Leipzig's a fourth liner. I don't know what team's going to give him a job.
Well, they're basically going to thrust this on Ted Leonsis and make him make the decision, which again, he didn't make a great decision with Kuznetsov because he basically didn't do anything.
Right.
So now he'll do something, and no matter what, it'll look bad, but that's just going to be the way it is. We know there's a class system in the NHL. We know this is wrong, but they're going to get rid of Brendan Leipsic, and nobody else is probably going to hire him.
Now,
that's in the NHL. And in the AHL, we'll see. That may get contentious too, because teams may not want to deal with the PR.
I think anywhere in North America right now is going to be it's going to be real tough to sell to a fan base. Brendan Leipsic, he maybe if he's in like some far flung league, but the A's not good. I don't see the A touching him. And the E, it's borderline. I don't think the E would either. I think he
probably has to go overseas.
Jan, he's got
a couple of things. So
go ahead.
So the misogynistic comments, right? If they were just misogynistic in general, not about somebody specifically on his team, those would be half bad, right? And those are horrific to begin with. And look, you can argue that he was hacked or not hacked. And look, people make comments in quote unquote private to friends, and there's others I'm sure that have made really stupid comments in the past. I don't think anybody's absolvable of it, or anybody has not necessarily had that happen, unfortunately. And I'm not excusing it, but the fact that he made it about teammates, that has a compounding effect to the comments regarding his line mates. Now, the Capitals have to evaluate it based upon the comments as a whole, regardless of who they were made to and who they were made about. And that's what's going to cause a suspension from the Capitals and probably release. The NHL, I know people said, well, the NHL can't really get involved. Yes, they can't do anything, even though there's a conduct clause in everybody's contract, not enforceable probably by the NHL here, but by teams. But the NHL had to address the reprehensive nature of the comments themselves based upon what's happened in the past. The Kuznetsov thing, the difference is, unless you had video proof of him actually doing the cocaine, there was still enough reasonable doubt where you couldn't prove that he had done it, regardless of what was said. Here, you have pretty good evidence that he's the one making the comments, and he's the one that's basically has to be censured and basically punished for those comments. And that's, to me, where the difference is here between him and Kuznetsov, besides the fact that one's a fourth liner and one's a first liner.
Now, the NHL did come out with a statement late last night, which I was sort of surprised at, and I'll just read it quickly here. The NHL strongly condemns the misogynistic and reprehensible remarks made by Brendan Leipsic and Jack Rodwald, who's a member of the Florida Panthers organization, in a private group chat that surfaced on social media. There is no place in our league for such statements, attitudes, and behavior, no matter the form. We will address this inexcusable conduct with the clubs and players involved. Now,
especially in the time frame that we're in right now.
Yes.
Right. And that's the key. Do I think the league would have probably made a statement about this, whether we were in normal prospect of things? I think there's a pretty good chance they would. But I think now when you're looking at league business, this is something that puts a real dart that gets around, that gets into mainstream media very quickly, into your ESPNs, and it's bad news. I think regardless they would have addressed it, but I think especially that's why I wasn't surprised at all last night when I saw a league statement.
Right. No,
in regards to this at all.
You know what I think is going to happen? This is his contract is a 1-year deal.
Yeah,
he's going to make him sit at home. They're going to be like, "Hey, you know what? We're suspending you.
Conduct detrimental to the team. You can also there's a way of doing that.
Yeah, but there's two things. This is twofold. So they're going to have him stay at home the same way now the Kings have asked Jeff Carter to stay at home. And the interesting thing about the Jeff Carter thing is, they said, Jeff Carter said, I had this core injury and I was never able to really get it work done, and now I'm not really healthy. And so the Kings already came out and said, he's not playing anymore this year no matter what, which now puts his – so in other words –
It's a different flavor of ice cream in this circumstance, but the end result is the same.
That's how they're going to do it right now. That's my point.
Yeah, this is tutti frutti, Anthony. But go ahead, Jim.
They'll suspend him. They'll suspend him indefinitely, right? Let the contract lapse,
right?
And then he'll be an unsigned free agent, and then the NHL will probably say that he has to petition the league to return in order for him to be reconsidered if he wants to get back in, and then no team will end up signing him, and then he'll go to Europe or somewhere else,
right?
As you guys said.
Exactly. I mean, he's an arbitration eligible restricted free agent. They will just simply not offer him a qualifying offer to make him a UFA. I doubt they want to go to the wall with the PA, so they'll suspend him with pay probably because it's only a $700,000 contract, and then he'll end up in the SM Liga or the KHL. But honestly, he's killed his career, and I just saw this note. His brother Jeremy, who plays on the University of Manitoba men's hockey team, has been booted off the team because he was also in this group chat. So it's having ripple effects, and we don't know what will happen to Roadwall. But I mean, obviously I didn't know Leipsic very well, but I covered him as a member of the Marlies. Every time when he's interviewed with the media, he was a good kid. We know somebody who knows his family. It's really a sad situation, but his worst enemy was himself, and you can't get away with this crap in the era of social media. And I do wonder now, again, this is since NHL players, as all athletes do, have a ton of time on their hands now.
Yes. Yeah.
They're all, I guarantee you, after last night, many of them are going into deleting their group chats, deleting their comments. Maybe, in some cases, maybe deleting accounts altogether. But I think more, getting rid of those, racing as quickly as possible to make sure there's no receipts.
Yeah.
For lack of a better word. So that's the one thing I think we're probably going to see a ripple effect on. And those players also, I think a lot of NHL players are probably going to have to keep, their eye out on making sure of watching their commentary. And some have to realize there is no such thing. If you think there's such a thing as a private chat that nobody can get into, you got another thing coming.
Right.
Now, okay, we'll move on from this. I wanted to get into this because I've noticed this, obviously, watching a lot of sports shows, listening to a lot of podcasts talking about the NBA or Major League Baseball or hockey restarting. And every time we get into that talk and the time frame, and we hear, well, there has to be testing available. They don't have enough testing for Congress, let alone these teams, and they can't treat these teams preferentially over the public. My ass, they can't. The sports will do that. There seems to be a bit of shaming going on by media of these sports, trying to poo-poo, these legal, sports are not important. Yes, they are. They're important to the players. They're important to the teams. They're important to the people who work for the teams. They're important to the people who cover the teams. It's not just the players getting on the court in the NBA or hockey players getting on the ice or baseball players getting on the field. It's got ripple effects in terms of economics. So I don't get why there is this shaming, because honestly, right now, this whole coronavirus pandemic, it's affecting everybody. It's affecting rich, poor, black, white, everybody. And I don't understand. And Russ, you can go on to comment on this first. I don't understand the whole shaming aspect of this.
Well, I think I understand it. I don't do it, but I understand. First thing is, how many people know that this virus has mutated 40 times already?
Not too many people
get reported.
No.
And so for everybody that's just sort of saying, hey, reopen everything, we'll have a cure in 6 months, we probably won't. That's the reality because of it keeps mutating. So the other thing is, again, state by state, if you go through whatever their numbers are, that's probably 20% of what's actually going on. So when things are opening up, we're doing it blindly and not from a factual standpoint. As an example, Florida now is trying to suppress the numbers because they've opened up. Well, that doesn't help anybody either. So basically, I think that's where the shaming is coming from, because it has affected people. It has affected my family. I think you have to look at it and say, we're not doing this from a position of strength or knowledge yet. And that is the problem. This is all greed and money based, whether it's fair or not. That's what is running this whole thing. I know everybody talks about a collapsing economy and everything else, but there is a point where it's going to be too soon, and then they may have to close things again, and that's where the shaming comes from.
Anthony? I think in some cases with the
I know with the NFL, there was comment today about the with regards to the NFL schedule coming out, right?
Oh, yes.
3-hour special.
Yes.
And it was kind of looking at Adam Schefter's tweet, and it ended up with and giving people hope, and I'm like,
yeah, nothing about the NFL gives me hope.
It's like I know we want to like sort of give people something. It's called give people a distraction.
It's giving people
but it's like overblown sort of like pantheon of importance in people's lives.
Right.
If the leagues want to sort of operate again, it's tough right now. I'm wrestling with a lot of things. We all are with regards to this whole thing in terms of what activities to be involved in, what can you do? We've been stuck indoors for several months and we're looking at it continuously. I think we have to be mindful of as many different angles as possible. I think we have to be I think we have to be cautious and careful, and running face first into this, is dangerous more than anything. I think we have to,
So a couple things. So I'll take the NFL piece of the puzzle. The nation is crying for new and live entertainment, right? And the NFL draft provided that, which is we've had multiple discussions and we'll continue to have multiple discussions as to the benefits, the pros and cons of the NHL doing the same thing in terms of their draft, right? So you see just how much everybody wants anything new or anything fresh by the fact that the ratings for a 3-hour schedule release tonight will probably be ridiculously through the roof.
Right.
Balance that versus the need to be smart and cautious and wise. Right. I am a firm believer that some of these states have opened way too soon. As Russ said, the numbers have spiked and haven't been reported. We knew the numbers were going to spike. Sure. And we haven't even hit remotely close to where the next level of pandemic may arise, because that'll be several weeks down the road with everybody congregating together and getting ill. When you talk about returning to sports and the exams, you have to consider it from a socioeconomic perspective, but also from a class system. People are going to view it as they are, and they are already on a different tier than everybody else, which creates ramifications of everybody viewing it that way, which then trickles down to, as you said, the shaming. And that's because people want to view themselves on an equal level and platform to other people. And now you're taking certain individuals and putting them at a level above where they might already be at, and therefore saying they need to get tested. Conversely, I will agree that if you're going to want to have sports and you're going to want to have activity, you need to make sure people are safe. But it's not just the athletes, right? That's what everybody's forgetting. You have broadcasters, you have potentially reporters, you have people who are working in the stadiums. Those are the people who are at the level where some of the quote unquote we are, where those are people that are getting impacted economically that will benefit from things returning to action if they're not getting paid now. And I don't know where that level set or balance is, but that has to be factored in, which is why, I think you're going to end up with them having the ability to get the test first. You do see why certain NBA teams have declined the test, because they didn't want to create that class system or perspective of a class system. But you need to kind of go beyond that and say, look, if we want to get to some semblance of a normalness or economy starting up again, you're going to have to bend the rules slightly as who gets what and let the test happen.
And Jan, I'm glad you brought that up, because that was part of basically the PR spin, was that, okay, these NBA players, they're not going to get tested. They're not taking tests away from anybody else because they're not going to have contact with any people. They're just going to their place to shoot the ball and work out, and they're not having contact with other people. So we can avoid the testing part. Okay, at a certain point, that's going to end. Scott Boros, again, I bring this up when I heard him last Friday on the Michael K show. He brings up, we have a mechanism set up to test every player every day, and and we have outlets that have agreed to do 5 times those tests for the public than what we're doing for just the baseball players. So he's got to couch that. He's got to cover that with, they were being altruistic
with promises that they can't. And in reality, we know it's just how can we force this thing through
as
quickly as possible.
Let's talk about other promises. I heard with the NFL now is finally starting to speak out, right? And talking about opening their facilities. Now, they would be opening their facilities quicker than sports that have paused. But the way that they said it, the way that Goodell said it really bothered me, because he said, well, don't worry. those places it's mandatory to wear masks and have social distancing. And my thought is, inside of those sealed buildings, how the hell do you know what they're doing?
Right.
Are you keeping track of that? Is anybody going to keep track of that? Like, that's a very easy thing to say, and then just to try and keep people at bay. But again, how do you know?
Well, we've talked about it before, right? Before, when we talked about South Korea starting baseball again, right? We've talked about the level of testing and oversight that exists within those countries now, right? You have the maintenance, you have the tracking, which, look, nobody wants their social liberties, traipsed on. But if you're in an issue of a pandemic and concerned about people getting healthy, that balance of risk reward has to be figured out. And I don't think we're at that point. But South Korea, look, they started up without any. They started up. There's countries where they're having single digits in terms of number of new cases, and some places have had no new cases. Now, whether the accuracy of the reporting is there, we still don't know yet, right? Now, I'm going to take everything with a grain of salt, but there are countries that were eons ahead of us because of the way they implemented things and didn't wait because of where the pandemic hit.
And we aren't necessarily at that stage yet,
and we're not. And that's the problem, right? In order for us to get to that state, we need to escalate. And that's not necessarily happening, nor do people really want to go that direction.
I'm going to say the one thing, because, again, I did just attend a funeral. The one thing I think people should keep in mind, and this is something that I think is a real misconception in public, and I think basically the president is not helping. Really, a lot of people in government aren't helping. Is this illusion that, well, it's okay now because the hospitals are emptier, so we could handle it. You don't want to think that just because there's a few extra hospital beds that now this could be handled a lot better. That is a very bad way to look at things, because hospitals could literally fill up overnight. Like, just because they're having a little bit of a lull right now is not proof of anything yet.
Yeah, but the issue here, though, and we'll move on from this because there's just a little note here from that we should talk about. See, the thing is, and this occurred, I think it was 15 or so years ago in the Toronto area with SARS. It didn't really hit many other places, but because of a lot of the traffic from China to Toronto, SARS was a significant breakout there. There hasn't, a vaccine has never, a 100% effective vaccine has not been developed for SARS. And there was nothing ever shut down with SARS in Toronto. I am of the opinion, and that if everything opens up, yes, everything's going to rise, because everybody's going to be everybody's basically put themselves on pause. They're staying at home. They're social distancing. That's not going to stop this. Once everybody starts going out, it's going to go up again. Can we keep pausing and doing this ad infinitum until we find a vaccine? They may never find a vaccine, and if they don't, how are we going to adjust to that? Is it going to be simply we develop herd immunity, and eventually we'll get past it, or it'll die out? We don't know. But
all right. So you bring up SARS. I know it's not as severe. That's one thing as the coronavirus. But the other thing is, I was supposed to go to the Toronto Expo when SARS was going on, and we were all calling it like the SARS Expo, just kind of like fooling around with that name. And a lot of people didn't go. Like, it was poorly attended. Yes, people were out in public, but not in the same kind of numbers that we're talking about that could happen here in a month. So I think you do have to put it in context. People were being very careful about it, and it did kill business in Toronto. And
it was localized. Unlike this, which got spread all over the place, through Europe, from China to the West Coast, from Europe to the East Coast of the United States, all over the place. I mean, this is, SARS was, a kid's birthday party compared to, the way it is right now. It's really sad. But I think we recognize that all these sports are really struggling to get back on the field, on the court, on the ice, and they're going to do their level best to do it. It's just a question of when and how and whether it'll be in front of people, which I don't think it'll be until probably either October or November, and then we have to worry about whether it comes back in the winter or not. So this isn't a story that's going away, unfortunately.
No, it's not going away.
Another story that isn't going away is the NHL draft. And Chris Johnston just tweeted out a few minutes ago, even though momentum seems to have slowed around the NHL's push for a June entry draft, that possibility still remains under consideration by the league. Everything is on the table, says Deputy Commissioner Bill Daly. This tells me one thing, Russ. The pushback is not going away. Teams do not want to do this.
No, but they did the same thing with Goodell. The pushback was there too.
I don't know.
That was at the end of a season, but there was so much GM bitching for weeks and weeks and weeks for the NFL. Now, I get it. You could say it's different circumstances, but it's still the same thing. There was going to be bitching no matter what. And what Daly's going to do is listen to all of it. And at the end, Gary Bettman's going to say, get ready for the draft, because we're having the draft.
But the issue here is the draft has been moved up from where it was normally, reducing the amount of time Steve had. The NFL draft was basically kept in the same spot in terms of the schedule, and it wasn't necessarily changed, which in my opinion has a material difference.
Well, the only reason,
plus NFL they had finished their seasons, right? Big difference in terms of evaluating players. They had a combine. They had everything.
There's nothing left to evaluate, Jan. Seasons ended months ago. There's nothing left to evaluate. Moving it up or moving it down in June's irrelevant. There are no more events. There haven't been events in a month and a half. They've got their work in. So all they have to do is decide on their board. It really doesn't matter because there is no seasons going on and there hasn't been. So there's nothing else to evaluate anyhow, as far as that's concerned.
I mean, Jarmo Kekalainen took a picture of the Columbus Blue Jackets doing a Zoom of their scouts. I'm sure most of these teams have amped up.
Oh yeah,
moved up their schedules because they have to be prepared for the draft if it's June 5th or 6th. Yeah. But I mean, I don't know.
By the way, just
go ahead.
Just in terms of what you said, let me find it. I think Brooks just wrote a whole column about something on this right now.
Okay.
Let me try to find. Just give me about 30 seconds to do it.
If this June draft catches you by surprise, you weren't really ready for the draft.
Yeah,
so this is not necessarily in terms of the draft. It's in terms of who could make it. He said the format of a 2014 tournament has not yet been established, but if the league goes with the top 12 teams in each conference, that would include every club at NHL 500 or better when play stopped on March 11th. That structure would include the Rangers in Chicago. So who knows where we're going to land on this? Still, we're still battling back and forth in terms of who's going to make the playoffs.
So we're not talking about the top 6 teams in each division. And by the way, you just said, Jan, it includes New York and Chicago. Gee, what big TV market?
If they go with this route, they could still go with the 6 teams top teams
in
each division, right? So I think the NHL
push for this, obviously.
So Carolina, F you.
Right.
That's basically, or Columbus, screw you. Because
as a Ranger fan, works for me. I get a higher draft pick out of it.
I'm the lottery then. You have to look at it this way. Every market is going to find a way to complain about everything else that happens this season, whether it's the draft, whether it's when the season starts, whether it's who makes the playoffs or not. There's just going to be bitching all the way through. But at the end of the day, these things are going to occur, and it really doesn't matter. Like, it's just, there's nothing we can do about it. We can only report on it. We can give our opinion. But you know what? They're pretty much done getting opinions. I think they're just listening to their owners vent right now.
Russ Cohen says, quit your bitching.
No.
Yeah, but that's all he's good at. So.
Michael,
the voice
Michael, that's pot and kettle, Michael.
I know. Okay, a couple notes here from Elliot Friedman's 31 Thoughts, which is always informative. The New Jersey Devils, who did interview Gerard Gallant for their head coaching position, apparently have also interviewed former Philadelphia Flyers and LA Kings head coach John Stevens. Well, first of all, okay, you guys know Stevens better than I do. His reputation has always been good in the league. He's currently an assistant with the Stars. I wouldn't be surprised if he gets another kick at the can, but this sort of smacks of like, it's more of a rebuilding situation than LA was. With LA, they were sort of a declining team. What do you think that
this is more in John's wheelhouse? I would say right now, this feels to me like it's more in you're talking about sort of a team that sort of has parts that can really be built up. John's good at that. John's time with the Flyers, up to the point of when they really started to need to push the boulder over the hill to really become a contender. That's when things kind of didn't quite work out for him. Young players, I think they very much like him. I mean, Carter and Richards, I think both responded extremely well to him. He sometimes gave a little. I mean, and some people might say, hey, maybe he gave a little too much leeway. Maybe if he had a little extra time, maybe he would have been able to push Philadelphia up up further the way Laviolette did. Although in reality, let's face it, under Laviolette, they barely made the playoffs and just got on a tremendous run at that point. So I would say I could easily see John Stevens as the Devils head coach. Now the question is, again, Gallant's going to come in with probably a bit more box office appeal because of what he did with Vegas, and that's something that I think will play a big part in their management, in their decision making.
But I don't know how much Gallant is a teaching coach. I mean, I know he worked in junior and he was really good in junior, and he's had a few coaching positions.
He put together a pretty. I mean, think about the disparate parts.
It was a mix. It was a mix of young and old.
That was a hodgepodge.
It was a hodgepodge, but it was a unique. Again, at the same time, Vegas was a very unique situation. He get a lot. He was able to get them believing in that they were a group of cast-offs, and that they were going to show everybody in the league, and they did. And again, up until the Cup Finals, they stunned everybody.
Right.
So that helps, I think. But go ahead, Russ. I'm sorry.
I was just going to say, I think Stevens is much safer. I mean, obviously, Gallant has skipped around now a little bit job-wise, and that's going to probably work against him. I think Stevens, you could sort of look at the same way you would look at Mike Sullivan. You could have rewound this for like 5 years ago, and we'd be saying the same stuff about Mike Sullivan. Well, he's had some shots at, starting spot.
As a builder, you look at him as a builder, as a guy who puts structure in place.
Yeah.
Yeah, John did that. There's no question.
And Sullivan went on that run of being an assistant with Tortorella and a few others.
Right.
And then he got his other shot. I think this is the same way Stevens is going. I think Stevens had the right idea, and then I think he played too many favorites. He was a younger coach as a coach, and learned that was a bad thing, and then went and became an assistant again and probably learned some more. I'm fine with it. I think Stevens is the guy. I'll give you
and also when he became head coach of the Kings, this was a Kings team that was on a descent pattern. Which
I'll give you one thing that Stevens does that he's really good at, and I didn't know. I found this out by accident. On the Stick to Hockey podcast, we had Scott Hartnell on right after he retired. And I asked Scott Hartnell, like, what was one of the more surprising things that happened to you in your Flyers career as far as analytics? And he said, honestly, when Stevens was coach, he brought him a printout one day and said, how long do you think the puck is on your stick, in your possession? And Hartnell said, I don't know. He said something like 10 seconds or whatever, and it was like 3. And if it's on it a little more, you might get more points. And that was, think about that. That was a while ago.
It's practical application.
Correct. And that's where Stevens could be very effective. And we've seen that. Look, Anthony and I have seen that at the AHL level.
Right.
So
now, Stevens is coached in Philadelphia and LA, so 2 head coaching. This would be his 3rd if he gets that job. Gallant has been in Columbus, has been in Florida and Vegas, so that's 3. Last thing here, and then we'll end the show here, Anthony.
We can take questions, maybe.
Yeah, okay.
I mean, if you don't want them, Mike, you don't have to.
No. I was trying to end the show with Anthony, but that's cool.
Yeah, it's not going to happen now.
No, he's gone. He's rejected.
He's departed.
He's the dearly departed Anthony Mangione now. So questions in the chat. We'll answer a couple of them. But this is the other thing from Freeman's 31 Thoughts I thought was a little bit interesting. The NHL and NHLPA have agreed that around 45 to 55 days will be needed in between the end of last season, the end of this current season, and the beginning of next season. So if you extrapolate that and say, okay, they want to start in December, then the latest that they can go is probably the end of September, or maybe the first week or 2 of October. Because
the first week of October is okay, and then you have your free agency period. You have during that rest period, you have that, and
maybe you still have the draft if they decide to wait until the end.
Right. And then if they're smart, they just reopen camps in December, and then they sort of wait and see how things are going with this pandemic. And if they schedule it like the NBA is scheduling possibly Christmas as being their opener for the next season. If the NHL went like a week earlier than that, maybe even 2, they might be okay with the snapback of the virus, and that would be good.
I can't remember who made this point, but it was a pretty good point. Yeah, the NBA can start at Christmas, and it doesn't matter how long the regular season goes and their playoffs go because they don't have to play on ice. They'll be. But the only thing that they have to worry about is the Olympics.
Well, actually, if you remember though, there is a humidity factor. There was a game canceled in Philly.
Yeah.
Because the ice is underneath the boards, and somebody didn't turn the humidifier on, and because of that, they had puddles on the hardwood, and so that can happen, Mike.
Yeah, well, as long as somebody doesn't screw up. So,
well, I mean, there's humans involved.
But the right, true. But the Olympics is the big thing. They're probably going to have the season ended by the last week of June or early July because the Olympics, I believe, are at the end of July in August.
If they happen, we still are really unsure if that's going to happen.
I mean, that's next July. I mean, if it gets canceled again, then they may not. They may just skip Tokyo completely and go to another venue. It's like someplace where
I could see that happening, Mike. I do.
Yeah. So, okay. Mike, my question is, how ticked will the Habs be with the June draft? From Flamester. Well, I mean, are you talking about because the draft isn't in Montreal, Flamester, or are you talking because?
No, I think he's talking about because they had all those picks and they're hoping to use it as currency. You know what? That's the risk you take when you have picks. Just because he got those picks didn't guarantee he'd be able to make a successful trade with them.
Yeah,
there's no guarantee of that in any year.
Yeah, you're SOL.
Right.
But I mean, I can imagine. See, that's the thing. And you're not talking about a weak team in terms of influence there. You're talking Bergevin, and you're talking the Montreal Canadiens, and you're talking Jeff Molson. If you got Jeff Molson calling Bettman and saying, "No friggin' way are we drafting in June," you know, I mean, he does work for the owners. Now, if he gets the owners in line,
yeah, but he's 1 of 31, Mike.
Right, I know, but if he has the owners in line, then they can tell the general managers to shut the F up. But I don't know if that's the case yet. You know, some of these general managers.
Jeff, I understand. I made a lot of money for you. You're going to get the money from Seattle to come up with another plan. Hang up the phone.
I mean, I think
there's nothing else you can do.
I think things are going that way, but they said that the announcement was going to happen this week, and it's not happening this week. At least it hasn't happened.
Yeah, so what? So it happens Monday. So what?
Yeah. Okay, I mean, we'll see. Let me see.
I think the Coyotes announcement will happen this week. I do.
Well, if it doesn't, what the hell? Let's see here. Bardicus asks, and this is the last one we'll do.
No, answer a couple. It's fine.
I know. I mean, I'm waiting for questions. And this is the only one
I want to give them a chance.
If Bill Peters is back coaching, will Babs be back? Okay, Bill Peters is coaching in the KHL. He didn't get a job. He didn't get a job
in Siberia.
Yeah, if Babcock wants to coach the Sibir franchise in the KHL, whose owner just committed suicide, maybe he'd get that job.
I would say this. To not use that as an example, I would say if he wants to go coach Moto, he can go do that, Mike Babcock.
Yeah. But if you're talking about an NHL, see, this is the thing. I think Babcock will get a job for a team that is really good that disappoints for another year in a row. And I use if the Tampa Bay Lightning lose in the first round. Now, maybe Cooper will get a pass because of everything that's going on. If it's a 1 game or a best of 3 and they get eliminated or something like that, then maybe he gets a pass. But first of all, Babcock's not going to be in a rush. He's making $6 million a year for another 2 years from the Leafs, so he can pick and choose what he wants. But I think he's only going to come back if he puts himself in a ready-made position to win. He can motivate a veteran team. I don't think he wants to do what he did in Toronto, which was he had to develop young players. I think if it's a team like Tampa and they fail, then he goes in with all those stars and says, okay, I can do my Scotty Bowman impression and go in and be a mercenary and win. But
I mean, nobody is asking for permission to interview him, so
right.
I don't think there's a rush to hire Mike Babcock.
And the funny thing is, and this was talked about after he was fired, the Leafs will only give permission for Babcock if the team will hire him at close to what he was making in Toronto, because they want to be alleviated from that salary. Otherwise, what does it benefit them?
Right.
Especially if he goes to a team in their division. Do you really want Mike Babcock? They have first right of refusal.
Right.
Do they want him coaching the Montreal Canadiens? No.
Right.
They'll pay you the $6 million. And the thing is, after the contract is I don't know how old he is. I think he's in his late 50s. I mean, who knows if he wants to coach anymore?
Right. He's
made his money.
No, absolutely true.
All right. Good job. Good show. We'll be back tomorrow with Kevin Allen and Eck, hopefully, for the departed Jan Levine and the departed Anthony Mangione.
Two departed for the show.
Two departeds, yes, it's spreading. Sorry, that was bad. And Russ Cohen. I'm Michael Agello.